afternoon, everybody. Friday. It's not a normal day for us to be broadcasting. Jeff Colson here. Let's get the other half of this duo on. There he is. There he is. Mike Bloom.
What's up? We're back.
You're back. Yikes. It's been a while, man. It's been a while.
I know.
Hey, now I can't hear you again. Let me see if I can check the audio on that real quick. Talk to me again.
We're back in the saddle.
That's good enough. It's good enough. Plus, people really don't. You're just kind of there. Nobody really listens to you anyway. So why are we worried about what your volume is?
That's right. I'm just here for the looks. That's all. Someone's got to be.
This is Junior Hockey Live. Mike and I do this. I'm Jeff Colson. This is Mike Bloom. We do this once a week during the season. We just thought we'd come on season 2. Hockey's upon us. It's here. And it's kind of time to reintroduce ourselves to a lot of our audience from last year, but at the same time, take a little time to let people that may not have known about us, because especially from our discussion groups and our Facebook pages and our Twitters and all that stuff, we've got a whole new audience. We've got a lot of new people here. So this is just a chance to get a chance to get to know a little bit about what we do, a little bit about all the quirks of Mike Bloom and, idiosyncrasies and all that stuff. So let's get with it. Mike, it's here, man. I mean, first scrimmage for Lone Star Brahmas is tonight.
I know. I can't believe it. It seems like such a blur that we just finished the last season and we're right back starting a new one. So a lot of work was done over the off season that I think a lot of people don't necessarily see, but it is exciting, right? You're getting your team ready for the next season, and there's still question marks that need to be answered, and the only way to really do that is start getting into some games.
It is crazy to think it's already here. The summer has gone that fast. Hey, look, while you're out there and you're listening or watching, whatever you're doing, drop on the comment section right below where you're at, and let us know you're out there. Let us know who you are, where you're from. And if you got a question at any time, you just go ahead and put it in the comments. We'll answer it. That's the easiest way to do it. If you're really, really good about it, maybe one day you can take over for my spot as Mike becomes more powerful in this duo. I'll get diminishing roles, and we'll find somebody else to replace me. So,
no way. You're the one steering the ship here. We're all just waiting by your word.
You say that, but we spent a road trip together from Chicago to Dallas a few months ago now. And boy, oh boy, did I learn a lot about you.
That was honestly out of a movie, and Planes, Trains, Automobiles was pretty much how that road trip for both of us went, being in the car for at least 12 to 14 hours each way. And I mean, there's so many stories that I'm sure we'll probably hash out over the next few episodes or whatever that happened on that trip. But overall, good experience. It was good to be able to ride together with you and just kind of share different stories, and even get a further connection between the two of us than we had already. I definitely learned a lot. I don't know if it was good things, but I learned a lot about you.
I got the one. We don't have to get into everything right now, but we check into our hotel, and within 10 minutes, Mike's already packed his bags and he's out in another hotel.
Yeah, I am a little bit of a hotel snob, if you will. Stayed in way too many hotels in my life in the corporate world, traveling around, and the fact that I'm dodging crickets and who knows what else in my hotel room wasn't the type of hello I wanted to see once I finally got there.
So the rest of the week, I had to go over and pick him up at his hotel and drop him off at his hotel. Not that I minded, because it was only a mile away, but I'm out of here. Boom, car.
Your room was a different experience than my room, though. It's like a fun house where each room has its own little unique experience.
They had their own themes. You had crickets, and I had the smell of crack urine.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I've never stayed in a hotel. I mean, I've stayed in some really bad hotels, And this wasn't a really bad hotel. It was a mid-level hotel, but I've never had to like go buy car air fresheners and hook them up and tape them onto the blower on the air conditioner just to be able to stay in the room.
Yeah, I don't think
So,
anyone would consider that a mid-level hotel, just so you know.
well, okay, all right. Well, let's say hi to some people. We got some of the our long time people on already. I see Jacob's jumped on. Jacob, good to see you. Swedish Junior Hockey Podcast. Jump on and check him out. He always gets good guests on there, and they talk about playing in Europe. And just so you know, unlike some people out there online that pretend to be news sources and pretend to be in your favor, Jacob doesn't own the team that he's suggesting, or he doesn't own an operation over there that he's trying to fill with bodies. So when you get information from him, it's unbiased. Although his son, who's a really good player, plays over there, and that's really cool. So good to see you, Jacob. Olds, Alberta is on, and Tom, good to see you on, and up for training camp in Olds. I've been up in that building many a times. Sat there and watched one practice on the wrong rink in Olds one time, and before about 45 minutes before I realized the kid I was watching was a AA midget player, not a junior player, and I was supposed to be watching some junior players. So been up in that area, Tom. Hope you have a great time up there. Enjoy it. And hey, look, Dave's on.
There's our guy.
Oh, there's our man. Dave is behind the scenes with us quite a bit. He was the first person ever to get involved with Junior Hockey Advisor on the Facebook discussion group, and he is extremely just does a great job of keeping everything balanced and people going in the right direction on our discussion group. So great to see you. Rose checking in from Barrie. Yes, Barrie, Ontario. Love it up there. You can't ask for a better place to go. Nice little resort town. Good to see you on. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Frank's on. Frank's back. Frank, glad to see you. Hope your grandson's doing well and things are going good. Here's another one of those names. Andrew's on. Andrew, good to see you. Been a while. We've got Jason from Pittsburgh. At what age should we get an advisor? My son is 9 years old.
09.
Oh, 09. Okay. A little different. We'll talk about that. We'll give you a little advice on that. Then, of course, we've got Robert. Robert, good to see you. On from Boston. That's just a few. And once again, you get questions, pop them right up on one of those, because you could be on different venues right now. You go to the comments, they should all fire back. And if they don't, you can always go over to click on the Restream button that's on whatever screen you're watching. It should have some instructions from Restream to help you out on that. So, all right, where do you want to start?
I mean, there's so many different things, but you want to start about what's happened since our last episode until now and just the different things that we've been working on, or do you want to start just previewing the next season? What angle do you want to take?
We'll do a whole preview show on what the leagues are looking like and what teams are looking like. I think the biggest thing that's changed, in my opinion, and we didn't pre-screen this or pre-produce this, so I might steal your thunder on this, but I think the biggest thing that's changed is Division I adding a third coach. And we talked about this casually yesterday. Division I adding a third coach, Mike, that changes the game because, there's a lot of people out there scooping up coaches for their Division I team. And now that's turned around and it's trickled down into the USHL and the North American Hockey League and into Division III hockey. We've got people we know that have gotten great promotions here in the last few weeks, all because of this change and this movement. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see all the different new opportunities that have been created from that. You see a lot of people, and it's almost, at one point, it was almost daily. You'd see a different coach getting a different opportunity. Now it's probably more every couple weeks because they're pretty much prepping for next year. So a lot of those things have already been taken care of. But just the fact there was a lot of USHL guys that moved up to D1. There's been a lot of NOL guys that have moved up to the USHL now. So it's just exciting to see that there's just more opportunity on the coaching side that has now been created just by the NCAA, kind of allowing some of these programs to have that third coach that they bring in, or in some cases the fourth coach, depending on the program. That's really good to see. And a lot of guys that we know from within the industry, when we see them getting promoted, the nice part is it's the right ones. People are really starting to identify who the up and comers are, and they're starting to make a name for themselves in the junior world, and it's now transcending them all the way into the college world. So again, all real positive stuff. Obviously on the side of the coaching and the different opportunities that have come up from there. But I think the kids are going to benefit a lot by just having more of the communication with another additional coach, breaking down film, getting into power play, PK, all of that stuff is a little bit easier to have, done because there's more hands on deck for these programs to have these conversations. So, and again, when you're on the bench, in some cases, when you're watching on TV, you'll only see two coaches behind the bench, sometimes maybe three, and it's more of like a trainer or an equipment guy that's there with them. Now you're going to see more people behind the bench, which is going to mean more conversations with the players. And it's going to be better for so many different reasons.
Well, the other thing about that is that you're going to see that a lot of schools were using that volunteer coach. And
right.
So you see it listed on the Division I teams, volunteer coach. And, there's ways that volunteer coaches make money. There's camps and clinics that they do in the off season that they could, share that revenue with the volunteer coach. I know when I was an assistant coach back in the day, NCAA the assistant coach, I was given a share of the camps as part of my annual salary. That I had a number set that I was going to make for the annual salary, and a lot of it came in one chunk. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to have that spaced out so I don't blow it. I was young at the time. It wasn't a good savings plan to get all that at one time. So yeah, that's it. I know I've got one person I want to congratulate on getting a promotion to a new job, and I'm sure there's one near and dear to your heart you want to do. Why don't you go first and give some accolades to a new NAL coach?
Yeah, we had Ryan Anderson, who was our associate head coach here at the Lone Star Brahmas for, he was an associate coach, I think, for the last 2 years, and then was a part of the program, I want to say, for 5, possibly 6. He had the NA3 team first and won a championship with that team, and then came on to the NAL staff, and he's now the head coach for Amarillo in the NA. So same division, which is going to be a little bit interesting, but we wish him all the best. He's going to do a great job. You can already see from some of the different radio spots and TV spots that he's done. He's saying all the right stuff, and he got some good mentorship from Dan Wildfong and some of the other guys along the way that he's ready. So hopefully we beat him every time he plays against us. But aside from that, we wish him the best of luck.
Yeah, that's congratulations to Ryan on that. The other person I want to mention that was actually an interview we did this last year, and it was one of our very popular interviews, was Adam Phillips. Adam Phillips, just a few years ago, was an assistant coach in the North American Hockey League. And he's ascended from the North American Hockey League to Adrian, where he won a national championship. Think about that. He went from the worst team in the NAL. The next season, he wins a national championship as an assistant coach. Then he moves from there, 2 seasons there, moves to the USHL, and now he just got a job as the assistant coach at Miami University. So that's a rocket ship. And if you've met him or you've watched the interview, I encourage you to go back and listen to the interview that we did with Adam Phillips. I'm sure we'll do a new one this year, but just a man of integrity, young, energetic, and well-liked. He's a firm disciplinarian, but he's got that players coach side of him too that it comes out really well. Really, really appreciate seeing him going. And we got another one. We forgot about one other guy. Used to be on our scouting staff. Buzzy.
I know.
You go ahead and tell him about that one.
Yeah, so he's moving on from Trine, the NCAA D3. He's going to now be in the USHL. So, good for him. And, he'll continue to keep moving up the ladder as well. He's a great kid. He's a great guy, I should say. Really hard worker, puts in the time. It's just, again, the people who are getting these different opportunities are the right ones. They're putting in the work. They're really good at what they do. And people are taking notice. A couple things to kind of shout out too. Ryan Theros also became a head coach in the North American League. He also was an assistant coach with the Brahmas about 4 years ago, right before we had Andrew Whiteside and then Brian Anderson. So the Brahmas have 3 guys that were assistant coaches in the last
Yeah,
6 years that are now NA head coaches.
that's great news, but there's also a common theme here. Until that one, the common theme could have been 1 degree of separation from Jeff Colson. But since you threw that one in the loop, it's 1 degree separation from Mike and Jeff. So that's not bad. All these people, they come by us. We're kind of the coaching cradle, the two of us. They get some attachment to us and they blossom out, And,
That's excellent. If only we could blossom out ourselves. That would be onto something.
I'm widening out, but I don't know if it's called blossoming. So
Fair point.
Actually, it's kind of going the different direction. I'm actually looking pretty darn good right now.
I know you dropped some serious weight in this off season. So
250, 300 pounds, maybe 400. I'm not sure. Somewhere. Big numbers, though. Big numbers. No, I don't know what it was. I wasn't actually watching it that way. I was just trying to get more active after my long-term COVID bout last year that I thought that I didn't know if I was going to recover from that stuff, man. It got me good. So Mike had to go through the whole thing with me on that and daily hear me go for about a month and a half. So
that was rough, but luckily you made it out on the other side.
So what does he do the day that I'm the first day back on the job? Most of you don't know this. I went through a spell there where things weren't so hot, back in the probably mid-late spring. So I finally get the clearance. I'm good to go. Him and I go on this road trip down to the main camp. We get down there, and what does he do? He puts me on a golf course. It's 110 degrees for 18 holes. Okay, I kid you not. I had tunnel vision after about the 9th hole. I had no idea where I was at. I was walking around like a blind man with a cane with my golf club trying to figure out where I was at. That's the kind of friend I've got here.
One of the dumbest things we've ever done. Honestly, that's up there with one of the dumbest things. It's 115 degrees out there, and we're golfing. And you're from upstate New York. I'm from Chicago. We hadn't even seen the sun yet, and yet we're coming down to Dallas and going golfing 18. I mean, I just remember going to each hole that had the little water jug or not the jug, but you're putting the water in the little cup or whatever, and I'm pouring it over my head because I'm trying to get warm or trying to get out from underneath the sun and get cooled off. And it was, again, that whole trip was ridiculous.
The only thing that kept me going on that trip, though, was your Rodney Dangerfield belt from when he was in that golf movie. What was the name of the movie?
Caddyshack.
What's that?
Caddyshack.
Yeah, Caddyshack. He shows up looking like freaking Rodney Dangerfield. That was awesome. Grosse Pointe belt. If you're from Michigan, you know what I'm talking about there.
That's right.
Hey, let's get back on topic. So Jacob throws up an interesting question, or wants us to take a direction here, and I think it's something we can talk about pretty easy. Let me just see if I can get on and throw his question up there. It would be interesting to hear your perspective and timeline of when USHL starts cutting players and the trickle-down effect happens to the null. That is an incredibly astute question from an intellectual hockey mind. So I'm glad to jump in on that one. And Mike, you can jump in too. How about you start? Give us your idea of what you think.
Of just the trickle down that'll happen between now and probably the next, 2 months or so.
Should I read the question?
Yeah, I didn't get to see the whole thing before you wiped it down.
Oh my goodness. This is the way it's going to go right off the bat, man.
You got all the eyes and the ears behind the scenes. I can't see it unless you show it. So
I put it on the screen for you.
Yeah. I mean, my perspective of it is, there's going to be probably, a handful of kids that'll trickle down, whether they end up in the North American League or they end up in the BC or one of the other leagues. That still remains to be seen, but it is a little bit of like a rat race. As soon as you get wind of some of the players that are currently competing for spots in the USHL that may not have spots when their rosters are finalized and whatnot, I mean, all the NOL teams are trying to get these players. They're trying to get them onto their rosters and things like that. So, it's not as easy as it probably seems. As just these kids are going to just fall down into the North American League. There's so many options for them, and in some cases, the area of the country comes into play. The program itself, as far as how successful the program is on either moving guys back up into the USHL or into college hockey and things like that comes into play. And then also they're getting, a lot of these kids have advisors. So their advisors have different relationships with other programs or other leagues. So, all of these rosters are not quite going to be settled until about October. And then from October on, you pretty much have your roster. So my perspective is that if there is any players that do end up coming down, I hope we can get a few, but I don't know that we will. That's the whole competition of the whole thing.
So yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, Mike, on that, and your perspective is really good on that. The biggest thing to know about this is, many of these players went up from a null team that are going to come back. So,
right.
You got a large percentage of the players, and we're not talking about huge numbers here. There'll be there'll be trimming of rosters at the USHL level. Some guys that get trimmed will go BC. Some guys will go null. That's the two primary choices that players have, and it's the BC guys that'll go back if they're a U.S. player that came to the USHL. Those guys sometimes come to the null, but if they got an opportunity to go back to the BC, they'll go back there. The null guys tend to come back to the null, and that's why this all kind of comes together into that magical thing called the draft, and you'll see that null teams draft some wacky picks. Sometimes you go, why would they pick that kid? Look, he's had 2 years in the USHL, or he just had a good year in the USHL. Well, he may have had a good year in the USHL, but he is an overager. And that overage, if he doesn't grab that overage spot on the team, which there's limited spots for overage players. Was it 4 or 5, Mike? I forget what that number is now. But so each team's limited to those overage spots. So he could have had a great year, but if he wasn't ready, maybe his Division I team committed to him for the year after. So sometimes you'll see this. Sometimes you'll see those kids go on and redshirt to their college team. They'll just leave early and go back or go to their college and enroll and start going to school. That happens. Or they'll go to the null team that drafted them. If they're undrafted, that's where you get the frenzy behind the scenes of, oh, so-and-so is available, so-and-so is available. Or their family advisor starts getting on the horn and starting leaning on teams to try to find the right home. And that happens extremely quick because the player wants to go to where he can be a contender, where he can play, where he's got a strong team and he's got a chance of winning a championship. The other factor that comes into this, though, because this is, like Mike said, this is complex sometimes. You've got the college that he's got a commitment to, if he's got a commitment, and they start pressuring the family advisor and the USHL team to help get him on the team they want him on. So this is sometimes where the player wants to go left, the advisor wants him to go right, and the college team that he's got a commitment to wants him to go down the middle of the road. So even though there might be a great team out there, we might not get a shot because they're all going in different directions. So does that kind of make sense? Did I explain that right, Mike?
Yeah, and then the other scenario that we haven't talked about is, most of the time, the kids that don't end up making it right away are the ones that were drafted as U15s in the futures draft, like the phase 1 draft. So in many cases, those kids will go back and play their U16 AAA year, right. Which then allows some of the older guys to stick up into that lineup. Those guys won't come back, like they won't trickle down into the null or some of the other junior leagues at that age level.
Not the younger guys.
The USHL is younger. So, yeah. But if they're really good and they're more talented, they could stick, which then pushes maybe an older guy off the roster. So, a lot still has to be sorted out, on the different USHL teams, and on, do we take a younger kid that is going to push an older kid out, or is it better to keep the older kid and then just send the younger guy back to AAA for another year? So all that comes into play, but you're exactly right. A lot of the guys that might, get trickled down already have their rights by a different team. So that's just whether or not they want to go to that program or seek another league to play in. But the free agent guys that don't have any protection in the NA, that's like a rat race to try to get those guys.
And I know I didn't experience it last year, but in the years past, I've seen USHL guys that come down to the Null, and they'll go to a team and they'll skate for 2 or 3 days. Then they'll literally go to another team and they'll skate for 2 or 3 days, and they won't sign first. They'll try to find a comfortable fit, and sometimes they're with 2 or 3 teams before they go, yeah, that's the team I want to stay with. That doesn't happen as much as you think, but that also takes a lot of guts on the player side. You got to be very confident that if you say no to a pretty good opportunity, thinking there's a great opportunity, that's like leaving a job for an adult.
Yeah.
Geez, I got a bird in hand here. It's pretty good. Don't want to take the leap to see if that job is better somewhere else. So that's very, very interesting. Jacob, that's a great subject to discuss, and to give preciseness to this. USHL maybe a week or two before we start seeing more trickle down. Everybody's just starting up now, and their younger guys, they might have an arrangement where they've already talked to their U16 or U18 coach, because they might have a U18 bound kid that they kept in camp for a little longer, just to see if he was going to progress quickly, or it was all predestined. Hey, look, we're going to keep him for about 3 or 4 weeks. Then you got a spot. Can you keep a spot for him? Because we're not going to keep him. And the family knows, the advisor knows, that both teams know, and that happens also. So a lot of different factors come into this, and a lot of different factors play in. So hopefully that.
And it doesn't just stop at the USHL going down to the Null, because if the USHL guys take a spot on the Null team, then those Null guys who because the Null by September 1st you have to be at 25-man roster. So if all of a sudden you get a guy, now you're at 26, one guy's got to, come off of that 25-man list. So then where does that player go? Do they go to a different Null team? Do they go to a different league? Do they go to the NA3? So there is a trickle down that's happening, like all from the top down.
Yeah, and there's also the option that some of these guys just stay, but they're unprotected, meaning they stay with a team. They're still USA Hockey protected with their insurance, but they're not protected by anybody could claim them in the league. So, let's say a team's got 26 guys, they got to trim down to that 25. That's the official roster that goes to USA Hockey and goes to the league. It doesn't mean there can't be 2 or 3 guys that skate with a team that are unprotected players. Sometimes you see a local kid that maybe the team projects he's good enough that for the next season, but doesn't want to play NA3HL, just wants to practice with a team. That happens. You see that quite a bit with teams where they'll keep an extra guy or two. Not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, there's another place where some of the players go. That trickle-down effect is important to know, because that I've probably fielded 6 different texts and emails and phone calls this week literally dealing with this issue we're talking about right now. Hey, we thought there was only going to be 8 defensemen in main camp, and I chuckle. Who gave you that idea? You usually main camp there's going to have, you're going to start with 2 or 3 extra guys than what the team dwindles down to. Injuries, changes in the attitude. Remember, you go away for a whole summer, you come back, some guys gain 20 pounds. Some guys have a girlfriend back home now where their mind's just not on it the same. Some guys put no effort into getting in shape for camp, and it's a liability to keep them around. That's choices on both sides. The coach has to make that decision, but a player's made that decision too to put himself in that spot. That's common. There's almost every team will have a player that come back that disappoints, that was a big part of the team the year before and just doesn't live up to it. And also coaches use that as a shakeup for the rest of the roster. If there's that guy that made an extreme change in his mental and physical ability, by cutting him, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the team. So that will happen, and you will see that. That's not saying that, that happens with every team and it happens every year, but it does happen enough that this is not U18 where you can come in and work your way for, where I can say a lot of the good teams in Tier 1 Elite, HPHL, the Beast teams, AYHL teams, coaches literally take the attitude, hey, we'll play our way into the year. First 5-10 games, Mike, you might even do this with your team. I don't know the answer, but where you're not as concerned with the first 5 or 10 games or the first 5 or 10 uh, weeks of the season. You're kind of preparing for the long run. Not in the null, man. No. For game one, they're already playing. It's not quite playoff ready, but they're playing for every single point because making the playoffs is extremely important. A lot of the coaches' bonuses are based on making the playoffs. So that makes sense?
Yeah. Yep. I'll add 2 more points. The one point is the biggest event almost every year is the NA Showcase, which has NHL guys climbing the stands and watching games, and all the D1, D3 schools, all these scouts from all over the place. That happens right away at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
so
hang on one second there. Back up, because the one thing we got complaints on is you and I talking in leagues, hockey slang. The NA tournament you're talking about, showcase you're talking about, is the North American Hockey League. That's the league that we're talking about right now. It's their main showcase that kicks off the year in Blaine, Minnesota. And every team comes up, and every team plays 3 or 4.
I think 4.
4 games, and they play it in a condensed period of time. Maybe 5 days, they play 4 games. So it's extremely tough on junior hockey players. Forget about your youth days when you get to juniors. You play back-to-back games, it takes ice bags and ice bags for the rest of the weekend to get over that. When you're playing 4 games in 5 days, you're bringing a defibrillator on the bus to get back to your hometown after that. It is a beat down on your body. But these teams come in tight. Sorry, Mike, I wanted to make sure we clarified what that event was.
Yeah. So my point to that is that because those 4 games or whatever it is that weekend has every D1 school in the building, an NHL team, and all these different high level, people that are watching you, you can't just ease into the season. You got to perform right away, not only as a team, because these coaches want to perform well in front of those higher level people, because that might lead to other opportunities for them. But in many cases for the players, this is where they make an impression that's going to lead to possibly the different commitment opportunities that they're going to have, and people that are going to want to continue to watch them throughout the year. So it's not like, hey, let's just play everybody and we'll put some guys on the power play and some on in this role, and let's just roll with it for a couple weeks to a month to see where everybody slots. You got to be dialed in right away, because that's a missed opportunity if you're not. And most of these coaches know that, so they're going to put that onto their players to, be focused right away and have their systems as well as they can in a short period of time to know what they're doing. Because if they don't, that is a missed opportunity for both the program and the player.
I don't have the dates, but do you have the dates of the event in front of you?
Yeah, I think it's September 15th might be when everybody comes in. I forget if that's 15th is a Tuesday or a Wednesday, but I think all the games start on that Wednesday, and they go like
Wednesday through Saturday usually for the and then there's other events that they're built around that too. So you'll have the NAPHL, which is the U18 and U16 component, and they're invited guests. So you'll see some Minnesota, for lack of better terms, Minnesota high school all-star teams that'll play in that event as U18 teams. You'll see other invited teams from other leagues, some Tier 1 elite teams and stuff that'll jump in sometimes. They use them strategically to both up the ante on how important this event is for 16 and 18. So you'll see some good hockey across the board there. It's a fantastic event. Mike and I are there every year. We'll be there this year. I think I'm shortened this year, Mike, so I won't be there for the whole 4-day event like I normally am, and that is because I'm going back to watch University of Michigan play on Saturday night.
Of course.
Got to be back for that. So,
hey, before we move on, there was one more point I wanted to make on just the roster.
Smokes, man!
Go ahead. Roster trickle down. It's important because when people get to junior hockey, this is their first taste of it being more like a business. Because when you're playing youth hockey and you're playing U16, U18, once you have your tryout and you make the team, everybody kind of has like this is my team. I'm going to play on this team and I'm going to have a role on this team and I'll work myself up or down. When you get to juniors, it's like you go to main camp, you end up going to training camp, and everyone's like, oh, I made it to training camp. And then you're like, well, training camp has a cut down. And then finally you make it out of training camp and you're still on the team. There's no like, oh, I finally made it. Because then you're working towards, I got to be one of the 25. And then once you get on the team.
Let's back that up a little bit, Mike, because you said some things that are pretty important there. Guys get out of main camp, and main camp can be a hell week too. You get drafted, you get tendered, means nothing when you get to main camp. Doesn't mean a thing because it got you in the door. You might get more exposure from the coaching staff because they know they drafted you or they tendered you, but you still have to make, teams usually take 30 to 35 players into the fall. But here's the thing, and this is a couple people asked me about this week. They said they were bringing 4 goalies in from main camp, and they did, but the 5th goalie showed up. That's business, okay? They never said we're only going to bring 4 in. Most likely, I wasn't there for the conversation. They only said that we'd have 8D, or we only expected 8D because that's what came out of the main camp. We brought 8D from main camp, but there's 10 here at the beginning of the season. That's the way things work, folks. You're gonna be battling that, not only like Mike said in juniors, but you get to college. Hey, I got a Division I commitment. Oh my gosh, it doesn't include any money. Guess what? That's the way the world works. You got to work your way into that money many, many times. You get on a team as a freshman, you've got partial scholarships or no scholarships, and they expect you to work your way on to the point where your junior, senior year, you're on full scholarship or a majority scholarship. Some guys play the whole time with no money, but that's the whole thing. You make it to the pro level. Guess what? Unless you're in the NHL, you're getting paid $400 a week, and you got to work your way up from there. You're at that point in juniors where now it's the mentality has got to be like a profession versus it just being I play hockey. You've got to wake up in the morning. It's a 9 to 5 job, and your thought process has to be on what I'm doing to improve myself mentally and physically to get to the next level. So, Mike, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, because, people get the sense, even when September 1st rolls around and they set their roster at 25, that, I made it. Finally, I can take my foot off the gas a little bit, even if it's just mentally take my foot off the gas. But that's not the case because we're just talking about the trickle down that's going to happen from the USHL. There might be 1 guy, there might be no guys, there might be 5 guys. Like, who knows? But either way, then that 25-man roster has to get adjusted, and it might be you, So You can never feel like you're completely safe. I'm sure half the roster does because they already kind of have an idea of where they're at. But, theoretically, nobody's necessarily safe. It's not like, okay, this is our team and we're moving forward, because at any point, someone could be in college right now and think like, I'm not playing, I'm going to come back down. Like, there's so many scenarios, not like that's, common, but it does happen.
Happens every year, though. It might not be common, but it happens every year.
Exactly.
Multiple players do come back from Division I and Division III. Okay, let's say hi to a couple people here. Holy smokes, Matt Maxfield's back on. Good to see you. Actually, a Michigan connection there, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. Upper Michigan, not right. UP, but Upper Michigan.
So somebody said hi from Michigan, but did it off their Facebook, whatever Facebook platform they're using. That's not good enough unless you're at the University of Michigan and you're saying hi from Michigan. Okay, I'm down with that, but otherwise you got to tell us where you're from in Michigan. I'm not sure who that is. Maybe we know who you are. And then Kelly jumped on to say 17th or 13th to the 16th of September, and Kelly, if you're heading that way and you have room for me so I don't have to ride with Mike, I'd appreciate it. Let me know. And I can drive a little bit too. And
not well. I'll tell you that right now, folks. Not well.
I just don't go fast. You don't like the fact that I don't drive 90 on somebody's bumper like you do, Chicago guy. Holy smokes, man.
Let's tell the audience how it really is. They see you talking all the time. You talk with your hands when you're driving, which means we're probably hitting the rumble strips on the sides of the lanes, probably, I would say, every 4 minutes. And then the other thing is you get going into a story and let's say it's 70 is the speed limit. I'll look down and we're doing 62.
and then 45, and then back to 62. I
Yes.
know, I know.
Yes.
I get enough of that from my family on my
Oh my God.
driving prowess, and sometimes I get talking to the story so good that I miss an exit or I miss a turn.
Yes.
Got to go around a little bit. So, all right. So we got another question I wanted to get to that I said that we'd jump to. I got to go back and find it. Thank you for everybody that's popping on and saying hi. We're glad to see all of you back and some new faces too. And once again, if you haven't liked and subscribed to our junior hockey live on YouTube, go ahead and do that. If you're not a part of our junior hockey advisor Facebook page, our discussion group, jump on there and make sure you become a member there too. We're going to talk about that in a second. We're not gonna jump out of that one yet. So Jason from Pittsburgh, at what age should we get an advisor? My son is not 9 years old. He's an 09. Okay. So in 09, what does that put him at, Mike? 14?
Bantam Major.
Bantam Major. Okay. Do people have family advisors at Bantam Major? Of course they do. So here's the thing. There's so many different levels of this, and we've got tons and tons and tons of information on advisors. The reason we started doing this show and we started doing these broadcasts in the junior hockey discussion group and the junior hockey advisor page is because we put a lot of content on there to help with this. There is no right answer to this. There's players that will go on all the way into the NHL that never get an advisor. Rightfully so. It kind of everybody knows, and are helping and guiding them. They get a lot of help and guidance from college coaches and from pro coaches and from U18 coaches. So they don't really need an advisor. The rest of us, it all depends on the level of exposure from your team, how much effort your U16 and U18 coaches put into promoting players. Some are really, really good coaches, but don't put any effort into marketing their players. They figure that's their job. Other coaches, some coaches get really, really irritated when you bring an advisor in. So if I was playing on a high potent team, I would, if I'm playing in the HPHL for one of the top two teams, or I'm playing in Tier 1 Elite for one of the big powerhouse Detroit teams, I'd make sure I had a good relationship with my coach and communicated with him first and talked it through with him before I went out and got an advisor, because a lot of those guys are busting their butts for you, and they figure if you're getting an advisor, you're going to get steered differently, or the work they're putting in with all these college coaches they're talking to or junior coaches is going to go to waste. So they get irritated. You got to be careful on that. You might be losing your best opportunity to move up to another level because the guy gives up on you. Doesn't give up on you as a coach on the ice, but gives up on promoting you because he's like, hey, you're going to get an advisor, and that advisor is going to call me up and tell me everything he knows about the game. I can tell you, at the U18 level and U16 level, advisors are not looked upon the same way they are in other parts of the world. And by the majority, it's not 50-50, it's probably 60-40, 70-30, where advisors become an irritant to U18, U16 coaches, and they'll come right out there and tell you that. So part of this whole thing is reviewing what you have, analyzing, taking that, the big picture of your situation. Am I on a competitive team? Do I have a coach that's really busting his butt for me? You can knock off those questions, and if there's no's in there, then it's pretty obvious that you could use some help, and it's fine to do that. The other question is, how much time do you want to put into this yourself? If you have the ability to do a lot of these things that an advisor does, emails, making contacts, going to showcases, playing on spring teams, a lot of this is what family advisors do for you. You can do all that stuff yourself. Now, does the phone get answered by, dad calling up to talk to, the coach at Johnstown, the Johnstown Tomahawks and all coach? Probably not. Okay. But as we've talked about many, many times, if you want to be a is it DIY, do it yourself? Yeah. DIY. Yeah. If you want to be a DIY guy, you can do that, or mom. Keep in mind though, you're going to be sending out emails and they're going to get less response than most advisors. Okay. When I say most advisors, there is not 100% response rate from junior and college coaches for advisors either. There is advisors that will never get the phone picked up from the University of Michigan because of the level of either the quality or the fact that those guys don't respond to every advisor just because you call yourself an advisor. There's a lot of people that have worked for years to build up that reputation to talk to Division I coaches, to talk to NAL coaches and USHL coaches. So there is no right answer to this. Mike, fill in the blanks on what I missed, or give your perspective on this too.
Well, I would just say from an age perspective, unless you're a USHL caliber player, that you kind of have a sense that that's the direction that he's in right now as a Bantam major. Getting into his U15 year is probably when, again, if you're at that level, maybe checking out a couple advisors just to kind of see what they're able to do and what the consensus is on your player from their perspective, and maybe have a chance to connect with some different teams and things like that. If he's on a little bit of a later path, meaning, he's probably going to go, like the NAL is a later path. The USHL kids are going to be the first ones going to juniors, and then the NAL guys, once they get to U18, that's more when they start making the jump there. So if he's not quite USHL now, to pay for an advisor this early in the game is probably too premature. You can probably save yourself some money. And then to Jeff's point, if you do have a program that you play for where the coaches do move a lot of these different players on, if you look at the birth years ahead of where your son's at, if there was, 2 or 3 08s that went and 2 or 3 07s that went to different places, well, then those coaches are doing a good job of trying to connect those dots for those families and get their players opportunities. So then it's just having the conversation with the program and those coaches about your son to get their sense of where he's at and whatnot, and what they're thinking they might be able to do and who might be interested. And then hiring an advisor may not be as big of it won't be something that you would need to do if you're in that environment. Until you're not in that environment, or coaching change happens and you're not getting the type of representation that you think you should. And then you can look into it. But there's other people in other areas of the country where maybe they're not getting that, and having an advisor or somebody working on your behalf, makes a lot of sense. And then I would spend my Bantam major year just trying to research these different advisors and find the right one for you, and again, of where your player's ability might be. And that's when getting into midgets, it becomes a little bit more of a conversation on actually joining on with them. Being a Bantam, it's way too early. There's not any opportunities that they're going to help bridge that gap for until you become a midget.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I would say this: if I was on a really strong powerhouse team, that there's going to be 1, 2, 3 kids that are getting D1 attention at 16 and 18, and you can see that they're getting that everybody on the team knows. It's no secret. If you got Johnny on the first line, he's got 50 goals in 30 games, and every game he's talking to Northeastern, he's talking to Providence, Michigan standing outside the locker room to talk to him. And I'm a second line guy, and I'm pretty darn good. That might be a time where I'd step in and get an advisor to help, get me out of the fog. Because sometimes what happens is the head coach of that U18 team is spending so much time trying to get those guys placed that he doesn't worry about second and third line guys or second or third best players on the team until that top guy's done. And that's not uncommon. That happens in juniors too, where coaches will work really hard to get those first level guys done so that they can move down the roster and start getting other guys placed too. Now, is that right or wrong? It seems to make sense, and it's pretty logical that if you get the top guys taken care of, it gets momentum for your team. Oh man, they've already got this guy, and this guy placed. This could be 16s or 18s. It could be juniors. But what you have to make sure you understand, though, is if those guys aren't placed yet, but they're just talking to teams for their junior or for their college level, what that does to you is they need to be placed before your U18 or U16 or your junior coach spends more time focusing on you. So if you don't feel like that first 2 or 3 months a year you're getting the love, sometimes that is the time to step in and get an advisor. Now, once again, I would never, ever recommend anybody get an advisor without making sure that they've kind of triangulated this. Talk to some veterans, maybe your last year coach, obviously your current coach. If you're using a skill guy, talk to him about it too, because usually those guys are plugged into what's going on in the market. Your power skating instructor, your skill instructor. If you play for one of these strong spring teams, these showcase teams, maybe talk to that coach too. Get a little idea. Triangulate all this information and make sure you're making a good move. I can tell you the last thing I want to say about this, Mike, and I'm sure you got something else to say, but remember, advisors can backfire on you too. You think you're doing a good job being hired because honestly, at Bantam level, Bantam minor, Bantam major, 90% of the advisors that are hired out of vanity of the player and the parents. And I'm going to say that again. 90% of the advisors hired at that level are hired out of vanity. Oh, everybody else on the team's got one. I've got to have one too. Got to have the nice stick. Got to have the nice skates. You obviously have to have that advisor too. Now, you can get talked into by advisors because a lot of these guys that are advisors, they don't care how many guys they bring on. They don't care what level you play at. They're going to take your check, okay? The biggest thing you'll find when you hire these guys is they don't return your call, okay? And that hurts. That hurts a lot. I'll give you a personal story, and Mike knows this story very well. We had an advisor that went rogue on us, that personally in our family, and started telling people, basically what he did is he had a couple teams that had a few of his players on there, and he started calling the shots, trying to tell the coach what he should be doing with his power play and what he should be doing with players. That immediately turned ugly. Trades were made because of that. So you got to be real careful on making sure the integrity is there on the advisor, that the communication is there, and then you're working this from all angles. That's all I got to say, Mike. It's your show.
I mean, you're 100% right with a lot of these different scenarios you played out. I would just say at the level that he's at now, as an 09, being a Bantam major, spend more of your time researching advisors if you're in an environment where you think you need that. And if you're not, that's great. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to go down that route because your program, your coaches, like everybody that you're ahead to play for, is going to help connect those dots for you. But again, I think the biggest thing is understanding the level of your player, because everybody thinks that, they're going to play D1 or my player wants to play, Division I hockey. At some point you have to kind of understand though what level you're at and what's the next available opportunity that he can get to that would be an increase from where he's currently at. And then do you need an advisor to get there, or do you have enough of the connections and network to help make that work? And then just go step by step through that process.
Yep. And sometimes there's the other side of this. You get the advisor involved because you get too many offers and you get too many opportunities and you're trying to sort out and try to figure out which direction to go and get out of the fog. And that's not a bad situation to get an advisor involved with. But anyway, lots of that. Jason, I hope that helped. I hope we answered the question a little bit there and it made life easier for you. So let's go on and see what else we can answer real quick here. Following the BCHL and seems like many new verbal commitments for all teams, many Americans and 16 and 17-year-olds from other provinces. Are you noticing more American players than usual? No, not yet. Remember the BCHL is still in this. They're in this flux, man. It's different. That league was very consistent for well over a decade, 15, 20 years, and everybody kind of knew exactly what you were getting in that league. Their detachment from Hockey Canada and from the CJHL. I think they're still part of Hockey Canada. Take that back. From the CJHL. When they moved away from the Canadian Junior Hockey League, which once again, the Canadian Junior Hockey League is kind of the umbrella that all the Junior A teams play under. So you got Major Junior, you got 3 leagues there. All the other leagues that are Junior A are playing in the CJHL, except the BCHL. They pulled out. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they pulled out. Most of the reasons they think they made a good move. I'm not behind the scenes with you. They're in our discussion group. There's a few leaders of the BCHL in there. Sometimes they'll pipe in. Sometimes they're on our broadcast and they'll pipe in too. I can tell you this. It hasn't had the same change. I'm predicting right now there'll be less Americans in the league this year than everybody expected. They made the rule change about imports this year. We'll cover that in a future broadcast about the import change in the BCHL and what effect that's having. That's going to be one of our main topics on a upcoming show here. Can't get through it all right now, but I don't know. More players from the other provinces. That's one of the reasons why they broke out of the CJHL. So you're going to see that the 16 and 17-year-olds. You're going to see the prep kids from the United States go up there. It's a popular place for the one and dones to go. 1 year in the BCHL, right to a Division I school. You'll see that quite a bit. So, Mike, anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I think they did break away from Hockey Canada along with the CJHL because that was kind of the big turmoil that Hockey Canada was pissed about. But honestly, I haven't seen. And the other thing is this year might not be common for the years ahead because it just happened, and then they did take. Wenatchee is basically moving into the WHL, so that's one program that's out, and they kind of.
And that team was almost all Americans every year.
So those kids are now on all the other BCHL teams because they're not going to the WHL. So they were basically like, they didn't do a draft to get those different players' rights. Those players could just sign with whoever within the league. But, that kind of is filling the roster with available players that have that talent. Now that the amount of teams are set next year when we get into this time, I guess we can see if there's more Americans that go in. But what I've noticed this offseason has been more Euros, I think, that have gone into the BCHL.
Because they've opened the door there. That wasn't a door that was open before, so that's going to change things quite a bit. All right, let's take one more. We're kind of getting off of the, we tend to want to talk about coaches, teams, and players on this, and we keep our other broadcast, which is the Junior Hockey Advisor broadcast. Which we'll set the dates for those. We'll put all that information out. We're kind of doing a little bit of both tonight, just to kind of give you an idea and a feel of who we are. And, you have to make a choice if you really want to listen to anything we say in the first place. So, but this is kind of a combination. Junior Hockey Live is usually just talking about teams, players, coaches, and we don't get into the progression, and we don't get into the how to work around the politics. We don't get into those kind of questions. It's more like, hey, who's good in this league? Why is that player doing such a great job in that league? What's good about that coach? Or we're talking about those kind of things. And then the advisor show, we talk about the strategy on how to progress from 16s to 18s to juniors to prep to college and even to pro. So we'll get into that stuff. And once again, we'll get all this put out so you know it all. Okay. Let's say Shane's on here. It says 2003 years, so corrupt, broken promises up to OHL, but perhaps that's how it is. Son got burned out and bailed. We're plus something and plus COVID. Yeah, Shane, I understand what you're saying. It's but hey, I hear what you're saying, but I hear that said by a lot of different years. And COVID changed everything. 2000, 2001, 2002s, 2003s, all felt the effect. Probably the brunt of it hit with the 2000s because it happened midstream in their last year. And so a lot of guys that were on track to get into Division I teams, that super senior thing came in where they were able to keep players for another year. So those 2000s that were all ready to walk in the door, a lot of the doors got shut. They just literally got ghosted by a lot of Division I teams. And that probably happened to, I would say 40 to 50 guys in the NAL that were expected to be Division I players ended up playing Division III. And that trickle-down effect. All those Division III teams, now they've got the influx of 2, 3, 4 guys because when you're a D1 level guy, they get shut out the door. You're not going to the bottom of the D3 levels. You're going to the top teams. And we all know those. Those are the Wisconsin Stephen Points, Wisconsin River Falls. That's the Adrians of the world. That's the Geneseos. That's and I'm missing the NESCAC schools. You got some great programs out there in the Uticas. These programs all gained 3 or 4 players that they didn't expect to have, which pushed guys down off of their teams too. So where did they go? Well, if the school had an ACHA team, they got pushed there. So I understand burnout happens, and burnout happened to a lot of players during that process and that time. So I get it. I don't think it's just a OHL issue. I think it's a hockey issue from COVID in general, and put a lot of pressure on players, and things didn't work out for a lot of people in a lot of situations. It affected my family. I know it's with the program that we're involved with Mike and I know it affected players there. So I feel for you, but you don't feel like it's just you or your son. I think it happened to quite a few players. So, all right, Mike, you know what else we got to talk about?
What's that?
We hit 10,000, man. We hit 10,000 people on our discussion group, and we have a winner.
That's a big number.
That is a big number because it seems like it goes in just. If you look at the graph on it from the day we started this, and we've been around for a few years now, we're still the baby on the block, but we've already passed everybody else, and that's what's amazing about this is there's people that have been doing this for 10 plus years with their Facebook discussion groups and with their Twitters and with their YouTubes. We've just blown all those numbers out of the water, and we keep getting bigger. I think it's purely on intellectual prowess from one of the on-air personalities and good looks, and I won't say which one of us, but that's my feeling. But it could be more. It could be that we give good, unbiased information. It could be that we actually give a shit about this and know what we're talking about. I don't know, but I like the intellectual. I think that's why they come on. They just want to see somebody that's fairly good looking and wants to talk about hockey. What do you think?
Was fairly in all caps? No, I think when you look at the other outlets that do similar things, I think in many cases they go for more shock value than actual real content and information. And I think one of the things we do a good job of, even though we both work in the null, so when it comes to like information, we have a lot more about the league and different things that are going on. We try to do our best to get the information from other leagues, and this stuff is always changing, and it's not only changing from year to year, but it's changing within the year in many cases with a lot of this stuff. So we try to do our best to use our own network to get a lot of that information. So when we do get on these different podcasts, we can share value. And the nice part is with this particular Junior Hockey Live podcast, we talk about, like you said earlier, what's happening within these different junior leagues. Right now, we're still in the off season, so there's not a whole lot to talk about other than just recapping what happened between when our last episode was and now. But when we get into the advisor, podcast, and it's coming to giving people advice on, the scenarios that are particular to them and their player and different things like that, we can't just give our opinions. We have to have fact-based, information that we can share, because we're helping guide you. And you don't want to guide somebody down the wrong path just because you have an opinion of one particular route or path or things like that. So, I think you do a really nice job of showing the information live on those different podcasts. You'll go to Elite Prospects and show people how to find the information themselves. And again, it takes the opinion out of it. It's showing you the exact things that are happening. And I think people love that.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I'm actually trying to look up our contest winner because I wanted to mention Mary. I don't want to even try to pronounce your last name because I'm going to make sure I got it spelled right here. But Mary A is one of our members of the group, and Mary actually won the closest to the right date of when we broke through 10,000. And even though we mentioned Mary in a quick, brief online little blurb on the discussion group, we'll give her her fair due, and we'll put something up that announces what prize she won. She does get a prize with that. It's going to be an email gift certificate, and that comes soon. And so, Mary, great job on that, and thank you so much. Getting back to the one thing we pride ourselves here on is we don't take shots, negative shots. We don't try to kick people when they're down. We don't try to attack the other people. But we will tell you this. The name of where all of our members are, where you are, for the most part, is under junior hockey advisor. But we're not advisors, okay? We advise on junior hockey. We advise on college hockey. We talk about all these things, but we're not advisors. And what I mean by that is a lot of places that are saying they're news sources are really advisors that are using the news source to draw in potential clients. We're not trying to sell you anything here. We don't. We stay unbiased. We don't let people try to sell product on our site. We don't let people try to lure you in. I know it happens from time to time. We try to control that as much as we can, and we're pretty honest. If you want to, consult with us for an hour, you can pick up the phone and talk to either one of us. We do charge for that, but we're not out there soliciting that and trying to shove it down your throat. That's not why we do this. That's just one of the things on the side that we do because that's the business we're in. So hopefully that helps a little bit understand what we do. And Mike, what else you got before we get out of here?
Well, just to put a bow on what you just said, I think the difference is we're not advisors, but we give advice. And when we do the Monday podcast, that's a lot of generalities that we go through. But sometimes people want to know, like, hey, I specifically have this particular issue, and they want us to kind of help walk them through it. So we're glad to do that. But we don't do these different podcasts because we're trying to, get money out of our viewers and whatnot. And that's the difference from what we do and what other places do, because you can feel that when you're on their site and you're getting solicited and, it's constantly, you pose a question and it's like, hey, DM me, or, hey, join this, or I can, do this for you or whatever. And we try to, not allow that on our site. It does happen. Good thing we got a couple watchdogs in the group that, Dave Kennedy being the biggest watchdog of them all, can pretty easily launch them out of there. So we try to keep it where we're just information sharing and not soliciting.
And we joked about it at the beginning of the show, but if you want to know about European hockey, go to sources like Jacob Dahlin and his Swedish junior hockey broadcast. There are people out here that call themselves news sources that literally own teams over there. So they're advisors and own teams or a team, and not in a way that's going to get you back to the States. They just are looking to fill their coffer. And I'm saying that with it irritates me to the point where I have to say something, even though I don't want to take pot shots at people. That's not, we've been doing this for years, and we don't get into any little tit tats with anybody else. We let people be people, but it's also giving you information to make sure you understand what's going out there in the real world. So with that said, that's it. Just so you know, Dave thinks that this is all about you. Dave, you just lost all respect from me.
I need to know, what did I do, Dave? What happened?
And then we'll let Matt come in with the last one. Without this channel, I would have been extremely lost. I appreciate you guys and all you've done so far. That sounds like a guy that's going to buy me a cup of coffee the next time I see him in a rink. So that's how you guys can reward us. Food. Okay, you see us at a rink, make sure we got a coffee. Now, I say that jokingly because most of the time when we're in the rink, we're in a situation where we've got a room we can go to and get free food and free drinks. So don't. That's the worst thing I could have really said, because now I'm going to have people slapping with hot dogs and with pizza, and of course I won't say no.
Yeah. All that hard work you did this off season, you'll backslide and undo all the things you've done.
Listen, we've gained a lot of new members. We've got a lot of great people that have been with us for a few years. Keep it up, folks. If you got questions, jump on the site, put the questions on the discussion group. Please go check out all of our YouTube videos. They're not all just the two of us talking. We've got a lot of educational pieces on there that are more like, you want to learn about a subject, boom, pull it up. You want to learn about how the tender process works, we got a whole video on that. You want to learn how the drafts work, we got a video on that. You want to learn about different leagues like the BCHL, we talked a little bit about. We have one of our members that's up at Olds in the AJHL. You want to learn about them. We got a video on the CJHL. You want to know how the CJHL works. You want to know how the USHL works. We've got videos on all that stuff. Go jump on YouTube, subscribe. It's very important that you do that. Hey, have a great one. Mike, you did very, very well, considering that, I don't think you were given any prep by me at all, except for, hey, let's go on the air. So good job tonight.
I felt a little tongue tied. I'm not going to lie. I'm not used to doing an hour-long podcast. Some of the words I was trying to get out just got stuck. So we'll be better. This is like training camp for us too.
I don't get better than this. I'm peaking right now, folks. The only thing I can do is go down from here. So Mike might be ascending. You get what you get with me. So everybody have a great night. Thanks so much for paying attention to us for a little bit. And I hope we helped you out a little bit. Take care, folks.
Take care, everyone.